There's about 35,000 of us guys out here at Mare Island. We're working 24 hours a day, fixing up busted ships and building new ones. Talk about your total war effort. Brother, we got it here at Mare Island.
Hello, everybody. I'm Justin Crossley.
I'm Ryan Gibbons.
Kent Fortner.
And you are back listening to Battleships to Beer, 10 years of the Mare Island Brewing Company. And we're on to episode 8, which we've just kind of figured out lands in about year 6 of your 10 years in business, which, lo and behold, was right around the start of the coronavirus pandemic.
The pandemic.
Yeah. Let's just do it like it did to us. Let's just jump into it.
There we go.
Let's just get on it.
But, you know,
get on it, get through it.
To keep the palate going, the one beer we chose to talk about this one, we've already told you the story, but the beer is perfect for this because it's the Survivor's Tale Pale Ale. And this is our tale that we're about to say. So let me crack this open here. This Survivor's Tale Pale Ale, it's a 5.8%, what I call the bastard child of pale ales.
Okay.
Because, you know, you've got, you have the India Pale Ale, which is just become the king of all beers.
Yeah.
And then you have, you know, lighter beers, golden ales, and this guy just kind of fits right in the middle. And besides Sierra Nevada, you know, nobody's really kind of paying attention to that pale ale a lot. And we love this beer. This is a fantastic one. And I'm going to drink right out of the can on this one, just because that's kind of what we went through.
We have another can here. I was noticing your pouring wasn't a quarter for 4 of us. It wasn't 3 of us. It wasn't 2 of us. I wasn't quite sure where you were going.
I'm just figuring this story is going to take a lot of beer because it definitely did at the time we were going. I mean, are we through the pandemic? Are we absolutely through at this point?
So this is a great question.
Yeah.
It depends on what you read, right? And it's kind of a matter of opinion at this point. Most of the things I read and my opinion says we're through the pandemic.
Agreed.
You know?
Yeah.
Does it mean that coronavirus isn't out there? No, absolutely not. That'll never happen.
Right.
But the pandemic's behind us.
But I think the scars of the pandemic will live on for, you know, my grandparents, they were tightwads, for lack of a better word, all the way to their deathbeds because they had been through the Depression. And I think my kids are scarred by the pandemic. We're scarred by the pandemic. Like, this stuff's going to live on psychically.
So I just went to my nephew's high school graduation.
Okay.
So he's graduating in 2024. And I had to kind of realize, oh, my goodness, he was a freshman. He started high school.
The worst.
At the height of the pandemic. And so I got to listen to, like, the student speeches. And it made me think of some things. You know, now, Ryan, parent, you guys think about these more than I do, but I've been pretty close to my nephew, and there's just a couple things I didn't think of. A recurring theme in the speeches were, so we started high school at home.
Right.
We were the first, class to ever do that in history, I guess.
Brutal.
Then we went to high school our sophomore year wearing masks.
Right.
Then comes our junior year where we have to reintroduce ourselves to everybody because we took our masks off.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about some of those details,
Yeah.
that it was sort of like a constant change for folks. And anyhow, the scars I think that those kids are going to feel those. We're going to feel those.
You know, my oldest, he's getting ready to be 7, but still, he started preschool during the height of this. And so same thing, you know, going in and just figuring out even how to just sit in your damn chair and having to wear a mask through all that. Like,
right.
It's mind-boggling to think of what the kids had to do to try to just even get an education through that. So,
yeah.
You know, I mean, we're going to talk about what we had to go through as a business, but again, these guys are just trying to figure out their formidable lives. So it's kind of insane.
It is, and I don't want to throw around PTSD like it's something that you throw around, but I don't know another description at the moment for what people are going to have to, what we're still dealing with now. And it's going to be tricky to see. I can't wait for the movie that comes out later, and when we find out all the things we didn't know and all the things we did know, and that I'm excited about.
Well, just to draw, I stumbled across something this week that it was super fascinating. And it ties back into all the history and everything else. Is Mare Island was one of the places that dealt with the Spanish flu in 1918, and there's these really cool photographs of them, these tents they set up, and And they went through basically the exact same thing that we went through with coronavirus, in these years. It was this sort of mysterious thing. They didn't know exactly how it was spreading. They actually put masks on horses for a while because they thought horses were doing it. And they had these just, beds upon beds upon beds, and they couldn't figure out why some people seemed to be immune and some people didn't. And I was, my son Owen, a little shout out, God bless him, love him to death. He's back from college and he's doing a little internship with the foundation. One of these to digitize these records, and it's the chapel logs that show marriages and baptisms, but also deaths. And he and I stumbled across the pages from 1918 when the Spanish flu happened, and it just says influenza pneumonia, influenza pneumonia, influenza pneumonia. We're talking like, this is an island with probably 2,000 people on it. Yeah. We're talking like 20 or 30 a day.
Wow. And
just pages and pages and pages of this. And you're just reminded that actually the world did kind of go through this before, but of course technology and communications are light years ahead.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that they probably didn't go through the divisiveness that we went through, and the misinformation, the changing of what we had to go through every day. Like, it was probably took weeks or whatever before they had to change. We had to change on the minute, on the hour, like what we were doing for the business. So, yeah, I mean, that is pretty crazy. You showed me that picture of it, and it is mind-boggling to see like all of these inputs of these people dying from the same kind of experience that we went through.
Sure.
And I think the statistic that always rings for me, for us, for the pandemic was we had 47 employees, if I remember the number right.
Yep, it was.
Going into the pandemic, and we went down to 7.
Wow. Yeah.
One of the things I remember, I was on the board, I was the chairman of the board for Visit Vallejo, and you heard the stories in January, December, January, and one of the things that I will certainly applaud Kent for is that we started to plan for this, because we didn't know what we were planning for, but we were trying to at least figure out, how do we fortify the castle, how do we draw the moat. And I remember going into those board meetings with Visit Vallejo, and there's a bunch of high-powered business owners, CEOs that were sitting across the table, and nobody was planning like we were planning. And I was just saying, I would bring it up because I felt even weird even talking about it. Are you guys doing anything? Are you hearing about this? And they're like, oh, yeah, we've heard about it. And one of the things, we kind of had what we thought was going to be a rough playbook. And I do remember, like, in the middle of the pandemic, doing these board meetings on Zoom, that I got a little bit of the kudos of being like, Ryan, you were right. We should have done something. And even our planning that we started with was nothing that we were prepared for. I mean, the last thing we ever thought we were going to have to do is to lay off 40 of our 47 employees.
Of course, it was unfathomable.
I mean, I remember it was Friday night. One of the things that we did is and in planning for this, is we tried to figure out how to have our menu online. I remember this. We were talking to our POS company, and we're just like, we hadn't done online orders before, and we were working through the process of it, and we had tested it out on Friday. And we even paid for some of our office staff, said, hey, order online, put it on the company credit card, go over and order it, and tell us about the process. And it was Sunday night that the governor shut the state down.
Wow.
So we knew at least that we had a way to continue to operate, but it was never, like, I don't know, the foresight was just something that, looking back on it, that was really impressive, that at least helped us set up to figure out where we go next. Like, we already had kind of the revenue stream figured out, and then we had to figure out what we had to do through it. And I mean, we ended up doing all kinds of stuff through that. I mean, of course, everybody remembers the great toilet paper, the desert land that it was. And we still had our major purveyor was still, I called him up and I was just like, do you guys have toilet paper? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, do you want Angel Soft? Do you want this or that? And I remember people saying, like, I went to 4 stores and I couldn't get one damn roll of toilet paper. And so it became very clear that the commodities that people were looking for, we could provide.
Right.
And so one of the things that we did is, I mean, I went to Tractor Supply and I found egg cartons. And so, because, you get egg cartons from your provider and they're just on these massive flats. And so we started making, 6-packs of eggs, dozens of eggs. We were doing pounds of flour, pounds of beans, pounds of rice, and rolls of toilet paper. And we were selling rolls of toilet paper for, I think it was 50 cents or $1.
I think it's $1 each.
$1 each. And one of the things we had made on Vistaprint, because we could get it very quickly, was we made little stickers that say our company motto. It says, "Damn the torpedoes" on it. And we put them on everything because it just felt like one of those moments where it was like, damn the torpedoes, we're going to get through this. And we're going to get through it as a community. And it's one of those things that's funny. Some people still pull out a roll of that toilet paper out of their closet right now and see that sticker, and they'll come in and be like, I just used one of my Damn the Torpedoes rolls finally. But, it really, I mean, I can't chime in at any point, but one of the things here that really solidified for me as what we were as a business is it really mattered what we were to the community at that point. And it really mattered that we were the place that the community could rely on, because at the end of the day, we relied on the community to keep us surviving.
Right.
There were people, I was one of the 7 that we're talking about here, and I was behind the bar again and in a mask, and people would have these orders, and they would come up, and we would have toilet paper sitting on the little ledge there, and there were 2 types of customers. There was a customer that would come in and be like, oh, seriously, toilet paper? That's hilarious. I go, you're a hoarder, you've already gotten everything, and you're not sitting there with crusty butt right now. Yeah. And then there was some people being like, oh my God, you guys have toilet paper? How many can I get? Yeah. And we kept it to a 2-roll limit. Yeah, 2-roll limit. Like, this is for the community, come back. And I was at a party this weekend for my now youngest. He graduated his preschool this year. And I hadn't met the father of the young lady whose party we were at. And he said, we moved to the community in 2019, and he said, the one thing that I loved about you guys is that during the pandemic hit, he goes, we came to your place twice a week because we knew we could get what we needed. And again, that just kind of sings back to me about, like, we knew we were doing the right thing.
You made the right move.
So.
Yeah.
And it was hard because, we were at that point, I was a business with 47 employees. We'd gotten pretty buttoned up on having, okay, here's our initiatives on the year, here's our budgets, you managers are in charge of X, Y, and Z. And yeah, we had to make a lot of decisions, we had to do a lot of things, but overall we had a plan, a formula for every year.
There was a direction.
Yeah, everybody knew what they were doing and everything else. And I think what was so tough is we must have reinvented the business plan and the direction we were going 30 times during this. And it's like, all right, well, today we're selling toilet paper. Can you make stickers for it? Where can we get toilet paper? And then when we ran out of the small rolls at one point, we still had a closet full of those giant, like what you see at the airport, the giant roll that's like 15 inches in diameter. We had some of those. And so people are coming in and we're like, $4 for the big one, whatever. And so, and I still know some people who, like, they didn't end up using it all and they ended up buying toilet paper later, and they've still got this, like, half this giant roll back there that they got. Yeah. But one of the things that we went back and it was super scary. I mean, at the end of the day, it would have been very reasonable to say, you know what, too scary, don't want to lose any more money that I'm already losing, let's just close up shop. And a lot of people did that. Right. But part of our thing was, and I take a lot of inspiration from Harold Bray and some of the things that we had done, was that we had a meeting, and I remember talking about it. We're like, you know what, Mare Island never closed down during the Vietnam War or during World War II or after Pearl Harbor. That's when you rallied, and this is our community. This is the role Mare Island played, and I believe this. This is not just marketing hype. We decided we were never, ever, ever going to close the doors entirely. If we had to walk orders out to the cars and hand them off, on a stick to people. Now, were we losing money? Yes, hand over fist. Yeah. And I'll never forget, like, Dana, glorious manager of ours. Now she's back there selling toilet paper to people. And,
our executive chef, he was now back flipping burgers again instead of, like, working on menus and seasonal options and things like that. Yeah, it was the customers that were coming in. There were definitely some that would put, they would have their $14 order and they would throw a 20 on top of it. And and I was just like, no, you keep that. And they're like, no, you need to be here when this is over. Yeah. You guys need to be here. This is my town, and you guys are part of it. And that was, again, one of those moments where we knew we were doing the right thing.
I remember I had friends and people we knew, like really good customers, and they'd be like, hey, I want to buy a gift certificate. And I was like, at first I was like, that's kind of random. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, can I do it online? Because there's really no other way. We didn't have a way to do it online. So we started working on a way to do it online. People are buying $1,000 gift certificates that they have no intention of ever cashing in. They were just trying to get
try
cash
to fortify
in the door so we could be there. And, we were a little cocky about it. We thought we were well diversified going into this. We had a rockin' tap room that was by itself. We had a special event space with the brewery there, and we had a little bit of distribution.
Right.
And I'm like, we're in great shape. Like if Noah's flood knocks out that side of the water, we got this over here. I mean, I was feeling really like we had good defense around our business, and all of a sudden it all closed in 4 or 5 days.
Well, all the rules got changed on you. Oh. And so you guys had learned how to play the sport. And then the league said, nope, none of that matters. Like and it happened overnight. I mean, so the only thing I was prepared for is the toilet paper.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Like, it's fascinating for me to hear you guys say that, like, the Friday before the shutdown, you were already working out your online sales. Well, I was screwing off over in New Zealand for the entire month of February. So I was gone.
Did you get trapped over there?
And I got stuck there.
Yeah,
so not only was I behind the game because all the rules got changed, like on everybody, I was then a further week behind the game because the U.S. canceled all the flights coming in,
right,
even for American citizens. Then they made it a priority, like, okay, now we'll figure out how to get citizens home and do the rest later. So I'm stuck in New Zealand. And I might have stayed if it weren't for my bar, for the Hop Grenade. I had to get back and figure out how to open.
Love my Kiwis.
And by the time I got back, you guys and other businesses around me had already figured out this online sale thing, and they were helping me out. There's a bar down the road who opened after us, but kind of took us as a model, came in and was like, how can I help? I can help you do this, So set up the online sales. And then I don't really think I ever saw us as a community spot during the pandemic. But in hindsight, I think I was wrong. And people came in and did the same thing that you did. First of all, they bought copious amounts of beer.
Sure.
Not enough to make us money, but enough to give us enough that we were able to do this. Of course, we laid
Keep
everybody
the lights
off.
on and the masks on.
And so we did that. And then we saw the tipping, the extra. And for me, I do want to say that you guys and a number of other businesses, be thankful for each other for the entire 10 years that you've had, but during the pandemic too.
Yeah.
Me and my partners clashed on everything during that time. I wanted all the extra tips people were giving to go directly to our employees we just laid off. I was just putting it in a jar over there and ready to telling them, hey, come pick up $100 a week. That's how much I made you.
Nice.
I had to fight about that stuff. It resulted in me buying out all of my partners during that period. So I do think that there's something about shoring up your resources, just knowing that, hey, we're in this together. Like, don't discount that ever, because not everybody got to do that, and not every business made the right decisions. Businesses started stealing money from the PPP, which we haven't even gotten into. No. So I'm saying to you and to your listeners that, like, don't even take some of that stuff for granted. You saw it as, oh no, this is just what we do. This is how you move forward. But you actually had decisions to make.
Oh, absolutely.
You made the right ones, but they were decisions. So anyhow, kudos to you guys. And then kudos to the community. And I did experience that too. And that was like one of the wonderful lessons is I actually met more of my regulars than I ever knew. I didn't run my bar before the pandemic. Well, all of a sudden I knew them all by name within like a week.
Right.
They bought a lot of beer.
Yeah.
So,
I remember a specific moment where I was on the phone. It was like, again, the state shut down on Sunday. We're into full online ordering, and one of the things that our POS platform wouldn't allow is for online alcohol sales. And the governor had opened up the ability. They did the quick change so that you could legalize the ability. ABC changed the laws first time they got it right, and then
careful.
I was on the phone on Monday with our POS, and they're like, "No, sorry, it's just we can't do it. We can't allow it." And I got to say, I rarely get to a 10, and I was at an 11 on the phone and saying, like, I've got 4 other POSs on the other line right now that are willing to make money and willing to make this happen. This is going to float. This is going to sink our ship right now. I need to talk. I ran it up the chain. Within 2 hours, they called back and said, we're opening it up. You guys just got alcohol in there. So it was really this cascading event that, again, we didn't have a playbook for, but it was literally like the field was just set out in front of us, and you just had to run. You couldn't. Coach be damned,
that's right.
We had to go. So,
and I think a lot of people felt like that, and I think I think our customers, your community, could see it in our faces. I know they could see it in mine. I changed POSs 3 times during the pandemic.
Wow.
But I'm certain now that they could see. I don't want to say they could see the panic in my face, but they could see that I was like, I'm just throwing something else at the wall today.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in, and we're trying this new thing. Thank you for being here. I just tried this today. And that went on and on. Like you guys said, you just kept kind of changing, pivoting every single day. And I think your community just came along with you for that. That's the $1,000 gift card you saw. They saw it on your face that day.
Going back to, we were saying that we had a pretty buttoned up business like process prior to this.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden we're shifting gears, literally sometimes twice a day. Like, okay, now we're going to sell this. Now we're going to do this. Now you're running the POS and you're doing this now and everything.
Right.
And the problem, and I think there's a little bit of a hangover from this that we just finally got over, is everybody got used to the managers, the 7 people who we kept on, that we were able to keep on. They would show up every morning and be like, all right, Ryan Kent, what are we doing today? Because there's no way we can guess this. There's no way whatever. And we'd be like, all right, here's the 15-minute powwow, and this is what we're chasing down, and this is what changed from yesterday. And it got hard because we've talked about this at many episodes. Like, we don't want to be Kent and Ryan's Excellent Brewing Adventure, and we didn't want our desires to be what's going on here. We're trying to be true to a brand. We're trying to be true to a business process, et cetera. And all of a sudden, it was just all about what Kent and Ryan were coming up with today. Because how else were you going to survive this thing if you didn't
like that?
Another survivor's tale.
This is getting deep.
You had to adapt or die on this whole time. And when we came out of COVID, it was hard to get the managers to get back in the groove of, hey, we got a 1-year vision here. We got a 5-year vision here. We've got budgets. We've got these things. You can quit coming to us and asking us these like emergency questions. And I'm amazed how long it took, but it took a long time. Just the sociology to change on this.
And again, I attribute that to how rapidly things changed, and then they stayed
way longer.
And by the way, by stayed, I don't mean the rules stayed. The rules still kept changing for 3 years. The rules just still kept changing. So I do like that you say you came in and you had your 15-minute powwow, and I would do the same thing. And I think what happened there, that your staff and my team, they were looking for leadership, right?
Absolutely.
But I also didn't have all the answers, and neither did you. So my 15-minute powwows came with like, hey, here's my ideas. What do you guys think?
Right.
And the company was never run so jointly as it was during that period, and I think that was a very positive thing. The feedback loops that we got from people and the way my staff got involved in what happens here was very positive. And I still set the guidelines for that. It's still my money to lose, but I am trying to save your job. But still, the input and the way we work together was pretty eye-opening. I trusted them more than I ever did with ideas to help me run my business, is probably the way I would summarize it.
That's great.
I mean, that's exactly what it felt like. And that was a great summation is, you kind of think back to like, World War II goes, Pearl Harbor happens. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we're one. No longer does it matter about anything. It's not my way, your way. It's like, how the hell do we survive this?
Right.
And there's, again, we unfortunately just laid off 40 of our friends and comrades that are gone at this point. Now, this is the ship that we have. And our job right now is to make sure this ship's here so we can hire them back.
Exactly.
It wasn't like we just like cast off everybody. It's like, okay, these are the easy ones to kind of pluck off. It's like, no. We can only afford what's in this room right now. Now it's our job to do all of their jobs and make sure that we can come back. And they have a job when we're done with this.
Yep.
And so,
but there was also this kind of interesting moral hazard associated with all this. And I do remember we were going around. First, we were starting the 40 layoffs, and the first 2 I remember were incredibly difficult. I mean, I'm almost crying in these meetings because we'd never had to do this. This just feels horrible.
right.
Yeah.
But it took us a couple kind of, we're paring it down over a couple weeks while this is, everything's changing, we're paring it down. But pretty soon these people are collecting unemployment. They're collecting more than they would have made possibly washing dishes for us or whatever else. And, they're starting to do the calculation, and they're, some of them aren't upset at all that they're getting laid off. Like, this is fine. I'll go sit on the couch for, $1 more an hour to sit on the couch or whatever. And it was interesting to me, and I'll give a shout out right now to those other people that stayed with us. There were people that stayed with us because they felt the way we did, which was that I'm going to be here. Maybe I can make more money sitting at the couch at home, and no, it's no fun sitting back here with a mask on, selling toilet paper.
Yeah.
But I'm going to help this company through. I'm going to do something that they couldn't have thought of it any other way. Whereas, we honestly had some employees that milked this for all it was worth. They wouldn't come back when we needed them to come back. And I still see some of those people, and you know who you are. And I don't know. I never said a mean word to you, but you know what? If you coasted through that whole thing, you went way down in my book. Like, even if I understand, make a decision for your family, stay home, I get it. It's an economic decision. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it, but I would have felt guilty about it, frankly, if I knew that there was these 7 people. We had people that were working high-level jobs that all of a sudden are just cleaning the bathroom for us because they're trying to help us get through it.
12 hours a day.
I'll let you, those 7, most of them don't work for us anymore because we've evolved since then, but I will never forget you. I mean, it was, and I think they saw it in us too. Like we weren't going to lose our company over this. Are you kidding me? We put way too much effort into this. And I will say, thank God for the PPP, and I have PPPTSD as well. I'm trying to get all through that. But, we did have faith that, you know what, as hard as we work and as hard as we're going at it, and frankly, as good as I think we were, surely we're not going to go under during the pandemic, because if we do, something's wrong in the broader world that's just going to destroy us. And so we had a little bit of faith that we were going to come out the other end, and people buying gift cards was one of it. The PPP was another thing. The ERTC, if you know what that is, came through, and that was another thing. And then we had grants. I became a grant writer during that time frame, asking for all these small business grants. And no, it made no business sense. It was really screwy, but what else are you going to do?
Yeah. And again, you're just throwing everything at the wall, and everything that they're putting forth. And all of those lifelines, which, by the way, I'm not one of the ones you'll find complaining about all of those lifelines, whether they were local government grants or federal government grants. Without the PPP, the hop grenade would not be here anymore.
Ditto.
Right.
Yep. Ditto.
It just, hands down, not here, period. So there's a lot there. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about maybe a little bit more about the PPP, because it's pretty fascinating. But I want to talk about how you guys actually did some normal business, like canning some beer, getting it out there. So,
oh God,
because there was still some sense of normalcy that it had to keep going. So we'll talk about that and more when we come back. Hang in there. Here at the Battleships to Beer podcast, we love getting listener questions, and we get lots of them. So we're going to do our best to answer them here on this and future episodes of the show. If you've got questions, send them to podcast@mareislandbrewingco.com. And now, here are some listener questions we've received. We are back with another Q&A with Ryan and Kent. This one in from Mary Kate and Sean in Vallejo, California.
Oh, boy.
Now, they say, we'd really love to hear about the Yardbird Trophy and any three-peat champions of the Yardbird Games.
I think they might know some of them, but for those of you guys need to know, our beer club parties for our Yardbird beer club, it always has a game of some sort, and we have this trophy now, and if you win the game, you get your name on the trophy, and it's actually, ironically enough, there is only one three-peat champion on there, and it's the Indiana Street Hustlers, Mary Kate and Sean on
people
there.
People who asked the question.
Absolutely. I mean, great.
That was a loaded question if ever there was one.
That's totally fine, but I know that it was 2017. They swept the trophy. They won the cornhole tournament in the spring, and in the fall they won the Six Buckets Championship. And then I believe they just recently brought it back to the Indiana Street Hustlers in, 2024? Yeah, in spring they had the Washers champion. So anything that they're throwing into a hole, it seems they'll bring it home.
I got to give them a shout out too. We had one where we had an '80s dress up at one of the yard parties. Sean showed up with this Richard Simmons costume. Yeah. Rest in peace, Richard Simmons. Yeah. But he played cornhole in a Richard Simmons outfit, and it was one of the funnier things I've seen in a long time.
And when Richard Simmons passed, we actually had to reach out to him and make sure he was okay, because he just pulled it off so fantastically at that party.
One more piggyback on that. We had a guy, Patrick, who was Mary Kate's cousin.
Nephew.
He's the nephew of Mary Kate.
Yes.
And Patrick worked for us, kind of first job in high school and for college for a little while. And I remember we took him to Six Flags as a company party, and we put him between us. He had never been upside down on a roller coaster. And we have it on video of Ryan and I and him just screaming his head off as we went upside down. And then sure enough, just like that was 7-8 years ago, he just got engaged and is getting hitched. I don't think the wedding's happened yet, but he's getting hitched here shortly.
I believe they met at the tap room. He ended up proposing to her on our rooftop. He asked me if they set it all up. It all worked out. And then, they apparently are going to have our beer at the wedding. We haven't gotten the invite yet. But,
but your beer did.
Yeah, always does.
So Sean and Mary Kate, thanks for the question.
Great
thanks
question.
For all the support and all of the extended family.
If you've got questions, send them into podcast@mareislandbrewingco.com, and you might also get a shout-out from Ryan and Kent. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Battleships to Beer. This is the pandemic episode. And so, as you know, we were just kind of talking about a lot of the trials and tribulations, and I'd mentioned the PPP and what an important lifeline that was. Kent, you want to...
Well, so this is something I kind of pride us on. Like, as Ryan mentioned, like, we talked about this the week before. This could happen. This whole shutdown thing could happen. We just need to be thinking about it, have a contingency. And then we were like, how are we going to get through this? And then we started hearing about the PPP. And I was so deep. I must have read 1,000 articles on this thing because I'm trying to figure out how to take advantage of it, what to do. And parts of it make a lot of sense. I don't want to get too philosophical, but at the end of the day, the government is frankly, I don't think, very good at pumping a bunch of money properly into the economy. So they tried to do this through the banks, through the small businesses, had a million flaws the way they went about this thing. There was so much fraud, a lot of disaster, but the general idea was there. But I was so frustrated. It didn't make any sense. I couldn't figure out how to do it. And I'm like, we don't want to get $500,000 deep on something that is a loan, I'm using air quotes, until we can prove that we used it for the right thing. I'm like, I want to know I can get this money back because I don't need to go, I'll do anything I can to stay alive, but I'm not going $500,000 in debt to the government to do that. You know?
Yeah.
And so we have a really good relationship with our congressman, who at the time was Congressman Thompson, and shout out to Mel Pillow, who is our regional rep for him. And I started calling over there, and I'm like, Mel, like, this thing doesn't make any sense. This part of it, I'm not going to sign up for this unless I have some assurances, because this terrifies me if you guys are not going to make good on this, that this is a grant. And Mel's trying to understand the business. I mean, these people aren't business people per se that are in government. And I ended up talking to the congressman directly. I ended up getting calls from his aides in DC, and they're like, how about this? What do you think? And I don't want to pretend like we wrote the PPP. That is so far from the truth. Yeah. But we were helping inform them of what are the unintended consequences, and would this work for you, and would this make you comfortable? And, you know, and that's kind of working its way back. I'm sure we're one of 6,000 people that they're talking to, but at a certain point I had Mel on speed dial and was talking to him like every other day about this. And to your point, if that PPP money hadn't come through, that's it. I mean, we couldn't have kept the 7 people. We couldn't have paid our rent. We couldn't have paid our insurance. I mean, there was no way. So the PPP was an amazing lifeline, very flawed. And in the end,
and even with all its flaws, just to put a point on that, I don't know that there was a way they could have gotten to us faster.
What else do you do?
Because had it gone through other normal channels, historical channels, I don't know. They were like, they need this fast. And so I give some kudos about it getting to us fast. It was terrifying the whole way for the same reasons you just mentioned. Do I owe this money? What do you mean by if I spend it on this? What can I spend it on? You know, all of these questions. But in the end, it ended up in my bank account, and I paid payroll and rent.
Yep. And you know why? Because all of us sitting here at this table used it appropriately.
Right.
And now, as you know, we're reading all the stories of people, you know, after the fact that are going to jail and everything for misusing it. Yeah. That I think was the other side of them not wanting to either go too fast with it or not having all of it. But eventually they just got it out there, which was great. Yeah. You know, one of the things that was just so we were already in the process of finding our canning line. So,
So like in 2019, you were
2018 and 19. You know, that was my main project. Was like, okay. Well, funny enough, we actually were going to go for a bottling line because we wanted that 6-pack, as you know, when we started in 2014, and then it became very obvious that the 16-ounce can was going to be, you know, the dominant packaging that we needed to go for craft. Yeah. So we switched gears right at the end line of like almost buying a bottling line and changed back and said, all right, we need to find a canning line. So I had, you know, reached out to a lot of manufacturers of canning lines, had checked some out at different places, and had vetted out everything and had finally figured out on the canning line that we were going to buy and we needed. I mean, I was out there with blue tape, measuring it out in the space that we had already designed for it, and finally got this piece to fit. Kent and I had saved up enough money to put the deposit down, and this was February 2020. Right. And, you know, my birthday's February 19th, send me a card. But you know, I remember it was like right around my birthday, we had just sent the, I don't mind, $80,000 deposit check to Colorado for our Cody canning line. And I'm on my way into work, and because I'm getting old, I listened to NPR, and the world was going to shit. So I needed to hear what was going on. And the news that was coming out on that day was the first case of the community spread in the United States was in Solano County, where our brewery is located. Yeah. And I remember going into Kent's office and saying, I don't know if that $80,000 check we just sent is very smart right now. You know, we don't know what we're going to, you know, that money's going to help us keep our staff if anything happens. And so I got on the call and I tucked tail a little bit with in Colorado. It was just like, hey guys, so that $80,000 check I just sent, is there a way we can kind of pause on that for a second? And they were like, no, you're not the only call we've gotten today. We totally understand, you know, not sure what's going on in the world. They were very nice about it. Okay. Super cool. Didn't cash the check. And then the world shut down. Nobody's buying kegs anymore. Everybody's buying cans. And I can't get a mobile canning line into our brewery to save our day, which before I could just call somebody a week before and be like, I got 3 cannings next week. And they're like, yeah, no problem. Gotcha. Yeah. And this was like, yeah, I can get you in 6 weeks. And so it got to the point where I ended up calling back about 2 weeks later to Colorado and was just like, yeah, so can I get that canning line next week instead? And they said, yeah, again, you're not the only one calling us now. Wow. And so we went ahead and pushed forward on getting it as fast as we could. They ended up coming out and installing our canning line in August. And, I mean, again, for them to send out the text, to get their equipment all out, it actually, again, was another one of those lifelines that helped us maintain our ability to get our product out there, get some revenue in the doors, and keep our employees employed.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that was a crazy one. And so then
I remember the break even. Like we ran the numbers on it, and we're like,
Kent's our numbers guy.
I was
for
like,
sure.
all right, we got to do 7,700 cases per year for this canning line to make sense versus a mobile canning line. Now, there's all kinds of pros and cons that you could go against on this, but that was the. And I was like, Ryan, we got to do 7,700 cases on this, and
don't put a number on the board for me.
Oh man, he'll chase after this thing like. And so I don't know, it was probably 8 months later, 9 months later.
8 months later.
I'm sitting at my desk, and I think I was on the phone, and Ryan walks in and puts a sticky note on my desk, just slams it down like a dollar bill, and the sticky note says 7,702 cases on it, and that's what he had just canned up. So it was a great investment.
Damn those torpedoes.
It was a great investment. But, you know, to go back to it, you know, in retrospect, everything's different. But at that time, it's like, oh, we're going to spend $80,000 to expand when we just shrunk our workforce by 80%. And we're, you know,
I mean, the whole canning line costs more than $250,000. So that was just our deposit on that.
Sure.
Right. And so it's just there was a lot of things that went on during the pandemic that were both, they could have turned against us as well. I mean, we took the PPP money and we paid for, you know, our employees, but we also threw some of our employees at building out. We actually expanded, believe it or not, our tap rooms. We bought a whole nother tap room, or we brought online a whole nother tap room because the folks, God bless them, who were running this restaurant.
I was still in wholesale, and you know, because of course we laid everybody off, and I was still trying to call on accounts, and I called on one of our accounts in Benicia that had been true to us. And just like, hey, do you guys need any? They were serving the hydraulic sandwich. I said, do you guys need hydraulic sandwich this week? And he said to me, he's like, you know, sorry to tell you, man, we've actually decided to close down shop. And I was like, oh my God, you know, God, you guys too? I mean, this is just horrible. Yeah. And he said, well, you know, he's like, we were kind of getting close to being towards the end of it anyway. This kind of just helped us out the door. And our landlord was very, very, very gracious and is letting us out a lease. And I remember taking like a 4-second pause, and I go, who's your landlord? In that moment. Because, you know, there were restaurants closing left and right. There were everything closing. And it's such an amazing location. And I just felt so horrible that there was not going to be something there. Yeah. And I remember going to Kent and being like, there's a spot in Benicia that is opening up that we may have an opportunity to. What's your appetite? And, you know, we called up the landlord. And,
and they were decamping to Costa Rica, if I remember right. Yeah. And they were kind of ready to retire. And we were like, well, you know, we'll take it on. But again, when I think back to that decision, we were just trying to be optimistic. We were trying to like the world will come out of this. We're smart enough to be in the pack that this stuff will work for. And so we went over there. We signed a lease with her, and we bought the equipment. It turned out not to be as great as we thought it was, but all the equipment that was in there. And we started this remodel project thinking it would be a couple months till the pandemic would end. And I don't remember the exact dates, but I think it was
we signed in June 2020, and we opened the bar in June 21. And so
that's a very scary time.
I mean, I hate to say, we got it on pennies on the dollar from what it was before, but I mean, that was another one where it's just kind of like, this is going to end. The world's going to move on. And where are we going to position ourselves at this point with this? And again, the location is fantastic. It's got such historical aspects of it. It was an old brothel back in the day. So it was one where we just couldn't let it pass up at that time.
And Benicia was, the name Benicia comes from the wife of General Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo. They're kind of sister communities. It's right across the way. They have their own armory. There's a lot of tie-ins to Mare Island in this really cool historic place. So it was something that's just right on the edge of the brand and the box, but it worked out really well because a lot of our employees were in Benicia, et cetera. It just made all sense in the world, except that it was during the pandemic. And then we should talk about the time capsule a little bit.
God.
So just, this is kind of a side note, but during COVID, we're remodeling. We had to put in an ADA bathroom. I don't know what your situation here is, the hop grenade, but like if you don't have an ADA bathroom, you're opening yourself up to a lot of lawsuits. I mean, crazy lawsuits. And there was some people, I think, not above board out there sniffing around, filing lawsuits against people without even having visited the places or whatever. But we didn't want to get in the middle of all this kind of stuff. So we decided to remodel this and put in this ADA bathroom. And this whole house, it was built in 1898, I think it was, if I've got my dates memory right. And it sits on basically a limestone shelf. And the floor joists are just like 6 inches off of the limestone underneath. But there was one section when we took up the floor that had all this old plywood. It was just all just like mangled. It looked wet and everything else. So I was kind of looking at it and I was like, I wonder what that is, and kind of, kicked my foot at it, and almost it broke, and almost I went 14 feet deep. And I'm like, Ryan, we go and we look at this thing.
It's almost like when we've got the coal from the coal shed. It was like, you gotta come look at this.
We start pulling away this plywood that's all, and we find the cistern that used to hold water for when it was a Chinese laundry. They used to use it for firefighting purposes and also for use for when it was Chinese laundry before 1898. They built the house over the top of it. It's 10 feet wide in diameter. It is 14 feet deep. And it's this old cistern that nobody knew about. Nobody remembered it. And we just stumbled across it because we were doing the remodel or whatever. And then we're like, ooh, we got to do something good with this thing. And so we had all these different ideas. One of them was to cover it with plexiglass. And so you'd be going to the bathroom in a place with a floor made of plexiglass with a 14-foot deep beneath. And I'll say almost every guy we ask, like, oh, that sounds like an awesome idea. And almost every woman we ask is like, I will never pee.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, we could put like a Santa down there at Christmas and light him up. And we could put a skeleton down there at Halloween. And so what we ended up doing actually is we ended up etching in the tile a little mark that shows the edge of the whole thing. But we came up with this idea during the pandemic. I'm very proud of this one.
You should be.
And we said, you know what? This house is historic. We're coming to Benicia. We hadn't done this. We're all about history. We're going to make a call for time capsules, for a cistern time capsule where we need submissions. And we spent like 2 days over, I think one day a weekend for like 2 weekends, maybe it was 3 weekends. And we set up out front because nobody could come in because it was middle of the pandemic. We set out front, and I think we were selling beer too. I can't remember, like to go or something at the same time, but people would bring their submission, and it was Rotary brought something by, a family brings some by, and it'd be, pictures or their own little writings that they did. And a lot of people were going back about the pandemic and what their experience had been like. We must have gotten 400 submissions on this thing. And we put it all out on the bar. We took a picture of it, and then we put it in all these crates, and then we lowered it down into the cistern, and we put a little note that we were going to open it up in no less than 15 years, because that's what our lease was. And, because if our lease is up, we're going to take the stuff with us.
Yeah.
And so including one of each of our beers that we made at the time.
Yep.
And all that is just quietly sitting in this 14-foot deep cistern underneath the bathroom if you come out to Benicia. So it was a fun project during the pandemic. It got people, they got to kind of peer inside and see what we were doing at this new tap house. And money was flying out the door. It was not going the right way. But we knew when it opened back up that we should be okay with that. And it's turned into a great little business.
Yeah, it's definitely one thing. Benicia is just an awesome little town. The community is fantastic. The they are definitely, I don't know if it's a bedroom community or what they say. It's definitely a community that when you go into it, you're like, where am I? I mean, it doesn't seem like a California community. But everyone there is really tight-knit. They know everybody, and they have their spots to go. And I'll be honest with you, the place we overtook was a 25-year staple in the community. And so, again, it was kind of like when we opened the Ferry Tap Room. Like, who are these guys? Why are they opening in our town? Mm-hmm. And I have to say, we're coming up on 3 years this year, and we're finally starting to hit our stride where people are like, no, this is our spot to stay. They're like, we really enjoy it. And the one thing I'll give kudos out to our executive chef, David.
Yeah.
Like, one of the things as we open up now this third location, it was like, okay, what do we do that's different? Then why would you go to the Benicia location versus the Ferry Taproom location versus the Pie Wagon at the Coal Shed? And I was like, the one thing that we can do is food. Let's let the food be a bit different.
There you go.
At the Ferry Tap Room, we've got the full blown-out kitchen, fryers. We can do kind of everything. And so that's kind of the all-American pub fare, and they do some great cultural spins on things. The Pie Wagon has its limitations. It's a food truck, so there's only so much we can do. But when we were coming into Benicia, First Street's a really kind of foodie a destination. There's One House Bakery. They're doing amazing things. Yeah. We've got Bella Sienna down there, Luca's across the street. Like, all of these places are really, dialed in. And so one thing I said to Chef was, kick it up a notch. Breweries kind of always just, you're going to have your burger, you're going to have your fries. I was like, Chef he was executive sous chef for Charlie Palmer in Napa. And I was like, let's throw out some nice tapas-style food. And this is where, we spent a little extra money, got the little button booths, that are really nice. And so that's actually our only restaurant-style location where you can sit down. Actually, it's even less about the beer, and it's more about the experience, where the other ones are more kind of casual fare on that. So.
I think that's what you guys do well, is be in your location, be in your community. How do we bring that into the four walls that we're dealing with? I think you guys always do that well.
I mean, if we're talking about, if you're opening a brewery, I can't overstress that enough. If you're not a part of your community will not support you.
Yep.
So if you come in and try to force your brand in the community, you might last a little bit. Everybody likes that new thing and is going to check it out. But after a while, you're not going to be relevant. And so you've got to really, be among the community. And if you're not.
That exact sentiment is why it boggles my mind that the lazy dogs of the world succeed in these communities. Because I walk by and I'm like, you're not a part of my community.
Right.
You're an eyesore.
Yeah.
You're a menu sore to me, too. Like, I so agree with you, and it boggles my mind that not everybody does.
Well, I think Applebee's, at least Applebee's does it really well. Like, I remember when one opened in my town in Maryland, and they literally went in, you walk in, it's like, there was a picture of me on their wall because they would go into the, and they'd go to the high school and they would,
Wait.
I know we're going to brush over this story.
This is not one I knew about. Yeah. You're on Applebee's wall, or we're in
Maryland. Yeah. So there was a picture of me and Tony and Zach, my two best friends back in high school, and it was a Spirit Week or whatever, and we dressed up. Our school colors were blue and gold, and we dressed up as the blue guys at the Spirit Week or whatever, and had big old sombreros on, and we were blue and shirts off with just shorts, whatever, and walking in the parade or whatever. And they took a picture of us, and it was in the yearbook or whatever. Well, Applebee's came in, and being the community place,
yeah,
they I guess went around and found things from the community, and we walked in, and I was just like, oh my God, we're on the wall here. So if anything, if any of these big locations or whatever did it right, at least they made you feel like they were part of the community. But they're a big corporate, thing. They stole my photo and they owe me some money.
I want to know if you're still on the wall there. If anyone ever where is it? You said Maryland?
In Maryland.
What city?
Calvert County, we call it.
All right, if anyone, listeners or any of us, I want a photo of this.
I can't imagine that 1997's Calvert County is still relevant on the wall of Applebee's. But
all right, listen, you got to understand. Max is actually in the room with us. And his jaw's still on the counter, as is mine. All these years with Ryan, I never heard the story about him half naked in a sombrero with two friends on the wall of Applebee's.
I haven't earned $1 from it, but I'm getting all the money right now. So, yeah.
Ryan on the wall.
I don't think we want to spend too much time on the pandemic, just because it's a bad memory.
We all
in some
went through
ways,
it.
But
You
we
guys
all
went through it.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about what I consider one of the brightest spots of the pandemic for us. One of the things that I'm probably most proud about in almost my entire career, and we've talked about these Yardbird parties at a different episode. And, the Yardbird parties were sort of legendary. And all of a sudden, you can't have a Yardbird party. This is before 6 foot spacing. I mean, you couldn't go out. You couldn't do anything. And we always have a Yardbird game at the Yardbird party, and there's always a new release and everything.
Always a part of food.
We can ship the beer, or we can, ship the beer to them, and they can come pick it up, but we can't have our party. So the first one, we actually did two during the pandemic that I remember really well. The first one we did via Zoom on week 6 of Zoom being a thing. People were still trying to figure out how this thing worked, and the blurry background and everything wasn't a thing yet. Everybody was figuring it out. and we did bingo. We did bingo.
Shout out to David Bales.
And he won the bingo.
He did.
From the Benicia Tap House. And I don't know how many we had in line because I'm not sure we even knew how to run the thing very well. But we had shipped the cases to them, and we're like, here's the beers. We're going to walk you through the beers while you guys are on the Zoom call, and we're going to play bingo. And when you have bingo, you need to put your thumbs up in the Zoom thing or whatever. And so we did our like little mini Yardbird party. And, was it fun? I don't know if it was fun, but people just appreciated that.
Of course.
In such a huge way. And then the next one, which came like 6 months later, we had some time to think about it, and we were up in the ante on this one. And we're like, you know what? At this point, we were 6 foot spacing, and we were like, we're going to do a drive-through. We're going to do a drive-through Yardbird party. And we got these A-frames that we set up along this long alley.
Yeah, one of the things at our Coal Shed Brewery is there's the parking lot that you park in, and then you go over this, what seems like a little bit of road, but it's a fire lane that basically, it's a fire lane all on the back side of the coal sheds that have a gate on each side. So we could open up the gates and continue through.
And so they so everybody at a designated time pulled up. There was a line of cars going around the block. And they're there to pick up their Yardbird, but we tried to do every element of a Yardbird party. So as they pulled up, there's little A-frames that are describing the beers that are going to be in their beer.
The history behind it.
And then we had people washing windows. We washed their windows as they were coming through. And then food, it was the General Vallejo we were doing.
We did churros.
And we did churros, and we did quesadillas. We handed them in through the window with people with masks. And then they got up, and we had a Yardbird game. I'll never forget. We had a Plinko. It was a giant Plinko board. And the bottom was, 8 slots of prizes. And from your car...
One of them was toilet paper.
That you could win. From your car, my daughter Lila, who was maybe 4th grade at the time, she would stand at the top of this giant Plinko board, and they would, from the car, point to the left or point to the right, and she would move back and forth, and then they'd give a thumbs up. We gave them instructions on this. They'd give a thumbs up. She'd drop the Plinko. It would drop all the way down, and whatever prize it dropped into... Be it, we had hand sanitizer, we had toilet paper.
Nice.
We also had a group shout out, and if it went into that, we'd yell, "Everybody honk your horn," and everybody in line would honk their horn.
I think there was a cartwheel too.
Yeah, Lila, if they got a cartwheel, and they'd be like, "What's that?" And Lila would come out. She's a gymnast, and she would do a cartwheel in front of their car. And then as they were pulling away, we gave them a churro.
And then the other thing we had too was we always have a band, and so I hired a band that set up their Zoom in their room. I think they were from Santa Rosa, and we had a big screen TV and speakers that was playing it, and you could actually log in through your phone and have it in through your speaker, in through your car. So at least you could hear the band as you were going through, and then you get up and you saw the video of them playing. And so
and we threw the case of the Yardbird case into their trunk for them as they were coming through. And it was so fun, and it felt so good. The other thing was
it sucked.
People
but it was a great option.
Well, it was lemonade from lemons. There's
that's the better way.
The reason I absolutely knew we were onto something is some people got done and just drove back into the line again, so they could go through again and and they were like, "You don't need to feed me. You don't need to put another case in there." I just am so grateful. And some of these people, it was the first time they'd been out of the house in like 6 or 8 months, and they had the whole family in there, some of these people.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, all right, we're not back on track yet, but we haven't lost it.
Yeah, still got it. The one thing that I have said since the pandemic is that, before there's, running a business is hard. You get things that come up against you every day. We were just talking about insurance offline, those kind of things. But to this day, there is no hurdle we can't get over.
Right.
Everything at this point is a small hurdle. There is a way over it. If that is the one scar that I'll take with me is that we can get through this.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we did lose some people, of course, didn't get through coronavirus, but ultimately, as a community, as a human race, we can get through anything if we just put the right powers in the right direction and move through it. And so that's the resolve that I've taken out of it. So.
Fantastic. Kent, you got a question?
Oh,
got a rando question for Ryan?
God, the question.
I was just gonna. It's a softball. I started hearing the story that I didn't know much about. This is totally unrelated to the pandemic. Bring it up because it's good times, I think. I want our listeners to hear about the gentleman that I met the other day from Bulgaria who was making wine with you when you were in Bulgaria. I want to hear a little bit about your time in Bulgaria and how the hell you ended up there making wine, because I hadn't actually heard that story before. And that was the most shocking story right up until the Applebee's one that you just told a few minutes ago.
And so I was in a sombrero at the end. So, again, part of my winemaking career, I was trying to figure out and make my path notable to be a Napa winemaker, because I didn't go to Davis and get a Davis degree. So, it's part of the reason why I met you at White Rock is because Christopher up there, hired me and gave me a chance. And so in my travels that I was going around with, I went to New Zealand 3 times, Australia once. I was winemaker at a small chateau in Bordeaux. But in each one of those experiences, I met others like me that were from other places. And in my last New Zealand experience, I met Alex. And Alex said to me at the end of the vintage, he just said, "Hey, mate." He's like, because of course, he's from Bulgaria and his English is New Zealand. He's all, "Hey, mate."
Okay.
He's all, "Hey, mate." He's all, "Would you ever think of working in Bulgaria in wine?" And I first thought, my first question was, where the hell's Bulgaria?
Right.
I had to pull up Google on a map and figure out where it was. And I thought, no, I've never thought of making wine in Bulgaria. But, latitude-wise, they're on the same kind of plane that Napa is. And so they have the same kind of climate, same soils. And I said, you know what the hell? How many Napa winemakers have made wine in Bulgaria? I got a story to tell. And so he hired me on as a consultant, and I went halfway around the world, spoke none of the language over there, and they ended up putting me up in a hotel. And when I got over there, it was very different experience than anything I had experienced. It's very, Cold War is probably a light way to say it, but the Eastern Bloc is probably a better way to say. And, that was I'd say that was my most humane winemaking experience, because over there they had gypsies were the workforce over there. So a lot of these poor individuals from Romania would come and go through the Eastern Bloc trying to find work. And I hate to say it, but the Bulgarians actually didn't treat the workforce very well. And one of the things here in Napa is we have a migration population that does a lot of the hard work. And, I've always really appreciated that. And so over there, they were gypsies. And the one thing that I always did was in the mornings, we would stop and get beer on the way to work. And the very first day, I will never forget it, I grabbed all kinds of beers. And they were like, "Mate, there's only 5 of us in the car." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's 20 gypsies back there doing the work that we need them to do for." And so after that, I jokingly say I became the Gypsy King, because the one thing that will always stick with me is they said to me in the car when I grabbed all the beer, they said, "Hey, mate, you know why the Russian bear is a dancing bear? Is because he's hungry, and he dances because he needs to eat." Mm-hmm. And I said, "Not our bears. They dance because they like us. They dance because they want to work for us." And so after that, it was one of those things that I don't know if that carried on after I left, but I made sure during that vintage that everyone that worked for us because they wanted to be part of the team, not because they were only hired hands. And so I don't know if that answered the question, but it was.
Well, I hadn't intended, but I think that brings it around and puts a good exclamation point on it. It was for my kids who are listening out there, for anybody who's young, who's getting into it, those kind of experiences. I don't think I'm drawing too long of a bridge here to say the experience of doing something like that in Bulgaria. Then when the pandemic hits you, you've got some vestige of a playbook of dealing with unusual situations with unusual circumstances that aren't fair. How do you get through this? How do you get these things? I don't want to oversimplify it, but no. I hadn't thought about that. But I think all the things that I did that were just wacky and at the time don't make any sense, those fueled what I was able to do during the pandemic to keep ahead on me. And I think that story, when you told it to me, I see vestiges of that in how you treat people today and kind of through the pandemic, how we kept our employees going and what we did. And so I just love this. Who the hell? I don't know anybody who we did winemaking in Bulgaria. It's a fantastic thing.
It was an amazing adventure that I hope to go back someday, but I'm not so sure. So, yeah.
If you didn't have to stick to the brand so tight, we would have had 2 different beer names for you today. Winemaking in Bulgaria and Ryan on the wall.
Yeah.
Ryan on Applebee's wall.
Applebee's sombrero,
right.
Yeah.
But we gotta stick to the brand. Well, gentlemen, I hope you don't mind me kind of saying on all of our behalf is that, this is the pandemic episode and how we got through. But we got through because of you listeners, you consumers, you customers, you community And so I thank you from the Hop Grenade, and I know that the entire team at Mare Island, who still has a job today if they want it, is because of you guys. So.
I can also say that we applaud the Hop Grenade for also being a customer during that time and
Yes.
serving our beer. So same.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us, and we're back with another great episode next time. So just stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, whatever you use on your podcast to get your podcasts. Do that, and you'll get the next episode as soon as it airs. This is Battleships to Beer, 10 years of the Mare Island Brewing Company. If you want to see historical and other photos to events referenced in this podcast, head on over to the Mare Island Brewing Company website at mareislandbrewingco.com or check out the link in the show notes for this episode.